Evening, YouTube. Nice to be here with you all. It's funny, I sort of live here, and yet, first time that I'm doing this? And I'm not sure how any of this is gonna work, because I like, everything that I have is set up for, like, Twitch. I'm hoping that things like the chat box and things of that nature are working. It looks like it is. So that's good to see. Tonight, as we celebrate this weird change of pace that we have today, we're going to be chatting with Jared from Monsters and Multiclass. Jared was kind enough to invite me over to the podcast a while back, and wanted to return the favor, and he agreed to be the experiment for me streaming on YouTube as opposed to streaming on Twitch like I normally do. So let's get this show on the road without further ado. Jared.
Hey, am I on?
Yes.
Am I good? All right.
Oh wait, it's already not working. Let's. Nope,
oh yeah,
I'm
cut off all funny.
Pro streamer. Whoa, 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 folks.
I'll stand like
there. It is.
Sit over to the side the entire time.
Pro stream. That's right, folks. That's the type of quality streaming that you get when you come watch a LegalKimchi stream. Now I gotta find like all of my YouTube stuff. You know? Here we go. So, how are you doing, Jared?
I'm doing all right. It's been an absolutely long day of wedding planning and going and getting fitted for suits and such.
Whoa. This was not brought up previously. Wedding planning? Are you getting married?
I am in about a month and a couple days. So real soon here.
Oh, wow. Wow. A month and a few days. Pop out chat 2. We're out of theater mode already. The chat box is beside the video. Okay. I don't know if this is a discussion happening in chat, between chat.
Such a difficult distinction.
You know, I usually have a very active chat, and I fully anticipate this will be a little bit of a calmer stream as you know, again, some of my Twitch folks are not getting their alerts, but my YouTube folks should be receiving their alerts. You know, that's why it's so important to, you know, like, comment, subscribe, and hit the little bell icon. This is the bell icon situation right there, right?
Throwing it in early.
It's what I do. Like, you create content, right? You have, it is a discussion between chat about this whole thing.
UI. Yep.
Exactly, the UI, the switch. Okay, because again, switch from Twitch as we try to get away from the hate raids that have been constantly happening over there. And
you just got a title right there. The switch from Twitch to get away from the hate raids.
Exactly. Why is no one putting me on this? So you also do content creation. You also do, you know, you're putting yourself out there. You have a little podcast, and I mean, little, it's much larger than my YouTube channel. But how did that go? Like, tell me that story, the origin story of Monsters and Multiclass. How long have you been doing it? What instigated it? What started that off?
Sure. So we are in our third-ish year, I think in October, so we're almost there. Just hit our 100th episode, official episodes, which we're like pretty excited about. That's a pretty cool milestone. Though what constitutes an episode has changed drastically from when we first started. We used to do a multi-class discussion and a monster per episode, and it was like 45 minutes. We just had these like really quick and dirty episodes, and now we do like a single one of each or something else, like we do subclass breakdowns or talk about random discussions, whatever, and they range from like an hour to an hour and 45 minutes. So I think we started to find that we could talk about these things for much longer, and had to split them up into separate episodes for our sanity of editing and recording, because we were trying to record like 4 episodes in a day before. Now we do like 2 every other week, and kind of, break them up, 3-hour blocks of recording, sometimes 4. Either way. As for what started the podcast, I think that most podcasts have a somewhat similar origin story of people like to hear themselves talk, and they thought maybe other people will like to hear me talk.
There's always that. There's
Yeah.
always that. It's funny to me because, like, you talk about putting out 45-minute to almost 2-hour episodes, and I, wring my hands at the fact that I just produced a 40-minute video.
It's such a different style. And the one thing that I've found is that being able to bounce off people in an actual conversation is just going to lead you down different rabbit holes and such, compared to when you sit in front of a camera with a dedicated topic that you are trying to put together an extremely high quality, well-researched, well thought out, I won't even say opinion piece, but just like, a piece around whatever topic you choose. There's not much room for branching, because you don't want to go out in territory that you don't feel prepared for. Whereas for us, that's generally where some of the better discussion happens, because we're allowed to be wrong. It's part of the conversational piece, because I can throw something out there and I can have my 2 co-hosts say, no, that's entirely wrong. And what are you talking about? Let's, get back to a correct discussion, or, correct's a bad way of putting it. But, if we're spitting out falsehoods because we're just rambling about mechanics and such that it's hard to have an encyclopedic knowledge of, it's easy to go on tangents.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I say that, and yet here I am on a stream, which is going to be like 2 hours long, where we're just going to be rambling and on tangents and talking about various things. And I've been doing that twice a week for months now.
Right.
And with some level of success. It's funny because, like, YouTube is my home online.
Right.
I it's my favorite place. The Twitch community, because of its like direct interactivity, because of the sort of like immediate back and forth, even with streamers, you develop these relationships, and sometimes the parasocial relationship turns into an actual social relationship. Right. You get to know these folks, and they get to know you, and they show up at your streams, and you show up at their streams, and all that sort of stuff. And it's very healthy, it's very big, it's very growing, and it's one of those things where I don't know, there's a different feel to it. And while I find myself more focused and interactive when I'm like watching a Twitch stream, for instance, or in this case a YouTube stream, hey, how you doing? How's everybody out there in YouTube land? As opposed to like video essays and things of that nature. Like video essays are sort of things that I will constantly be watching, but not actually watching. What's up, DC? Very happy you made your way over on the switch from Twitch, as we've coined in the beginning of this. Even if it's just temporary, even if it's just testing the waters, I'm surprised chat works. To this point, I still not 100% sure how that happened, but I'm happy that it did. I'm not technologically gifted when it comes to streaming.
You've made it this far.
You
got to give yourself the wins.
Pat myself on the back for that one. But yeah, it's wild for me. Just hit 600, And I always have this writing metric, and tell me if you're not the same way, because you have the podcast, right? And then you have your Twitch, or excuse me, your Twitter. Anytime my Twitter gets close to my sub count, I get nervous.
Really? Tell me more about that. Why?
So apparently your... Okay, I know what the problem was with my captioner. Jared, your captioner seems to have stopped as well. I don't know if Hubnob's having an issue.
Check. It's still going on mine. On my browser, that is.
Well, let me check the DM Steve Memorial browser. Or Memorial Chat captioner. Making sure all these things are working.
I wish I could juggle for times like these. Keep everybody entertained.
Okay, start talking.
Testing. 1, 2, 3. Check.
Doesn't appear to be going. Not sure if that's something with PubNub or what, but perhaps we should...
I can try to refresh and send you the link again. I don't know if that
Maybe.
would do anything, but I don't want to... It seems like it's already broken, so I can't break it more. And I don't even know if it's a new link. It looks like it's a new link.
All right, let's double check here. Bear with us as we deal with our technical difficulties. It is a new link.
I work in software.
I work in the law. All right, now start talking. As you take a sip of your
Check.
drink at the
Yes.
exact moment we're supposed to be checking captioner.
That's all right. That's on me. Working it all. Yes, no.
No. We're doing it live. Absolutely, DC. That is what we're doing. Okay, say something again.
Say something. Wow. Really feeling original today.
All right. There it is. That was a my fault issue. Okay, so, where were we?
So you were saying that when your Twitter followers approach your sub counts or your, well, let's say sub counts, because I think that applies to Twitter and YouTube, that you start to feel nervous. And
Yeah,
I'm very
yeah.
curious about that feeling.
So, like, I always want my YouTube to have a higher count than my Twitter. Because, like, my Twitter, to me, is basically an advertisement for this. Because this
Sure.
is where my brain goes.
Sure.
Twitter is where, like, the knee-jerk reaction, me trying to be funny, or me telling you about my daughter trolling me when she should be taking a nap. Parenting is a thing.
Mhm.
That's what Twitter's for. But Twitter should be directing people towards my YouTube. That's where, like, my effort goes into. Like, the amount of
Sure.
work that goes into every single video that I produce is something that I don't think a lot of people get. Which is fine. I mean, on one hand, it's supposed to look effortless. On the other hand, like, it's basically another job.
Right.
And I have a job.
Right. No, and I always find it really noble's a strong word for it. If I had to put it really plainly, it would be silly when people want to take on everything themselves. I'm calling you silly right now, just a little bit.
Thank you.
In the nicest way possible. Because I mean, I'm in a podcast with two other people. I'll say work-wise, we split it between two of us. One of them has accepted that they don't want to do anything, and that's fine. But one co-host, Kevin, Ellie, whatever, is doing all the editing. We kind of just show up and do our own research for the actual episodes, but then it allows me to handle all of the social media aspects, promotional, working with other people and all of that stuff. It is very much a full-time job in whatever it is you're trying to accomplish, and it can be a full-time job. I see some people who they really really enjoy, getting Twitter followers and kind of building their social media brand, and that amount of effort that goes into it is something that definitely can pay off, but it can be a little absurd.
Yeah, it's I'm not saying it was the smartest move, but like start to finish, the entire process of this YouTube channel is just me.
Right.
From coming up with the ideas, writing the scripts, filming myself, which is why there's no camera moves in my YouTube videos. There is literally no one to move the camera.
Right.
It's just me sitting over here talking to a camera that's standing right there, you know.
Well, maybe at some point your daughter can handle that part instead of trolling
Lucha
you while
Bear.
trying to sleep.
Lucha Bear, welcome, and thank you for finding your way over to the YouTube. I know this is throwing a lot of my usual community off, the fact that I'm here and not there, but hey, the fact that you made it speaks to me.
Welcome to the Twitch switch.
Welcome to the switch from Twitch. Switch from Twitch. I think
Okay,
I think it flows
yes.
better.
See, look at this. We can bounce off of each other. See?
It's already happening. It's already happening. But like the writing portion is, I think, I don't know, the writing portion of any episode that I make is really fascinating to be a part of. Okay, because it's the research, it's making sure everything's in there, it's the first level of edit. Then you start filming it. Filming it is not actually, like, I think for some people it might be their favorite part. The writing and the research portion is my favorite. Filming it is not always my favorite part, because usually it's pretty rushed. I'm doing it like during my lunch breaks from my actual job.
Right.
And it's pretty frenetic, and you just bust it out, you film it. I'm literally changing because I don't sit around my house in a suit all the time. And
The mystique has been ruined.
Yeah.
The illusion shattered.
I'm not in a suit right now. I'm just sitting here in my D&D t-shirt. 90% of what I wear, just D&D t-shirts. Jeans and D&D t-shirt. You want to see what LegalKimchi looks like when he's just kimchi. That's it. DC, don't even go there, okay? For a person whose nickname is the Hatamancer, I've seen you without a hat on.
Ooh.
Don't even pull that. Don't even pull that. But that's that. Writing, research, performance, filming, setting up the lights and all that sort of stuff to film. 90% of everything that I film is in this room specifically. But the majority of the work is editing. Like, I spend more physical hours working on editing than anything else.
Right.
And
I thoroughly believe it. And it's, to me, the most boring part of the creation process.
the first round of editing is the worst. Because the first round of editing is... Let me take you into my process. Getting my snootiness on. The first round of editing is just cutting out bad takes. So every time that I'm just like... So, because you create this image that I think everybody has on YouTube, where it's just, well, I just talk like this. I talk in an immaculate flow.
Sure.
That's how everything comes out of my face. I am a master of communication.
Ignore every time my head jumps from over here to down here, and
Ignore
lips don't sync up.
Yeah. Ignore the fact that I don't ever seem to breathe.
Yeah. That just happens once you reach a certain level on
Yeah,
YouTube. You don't need to breathe anymore.
yeah. I rarely blink. Like, um, I just get into this zone, and everything just clicks. No, but that first round where you're cutting out the so the mic doesn't get it, and you're cutting out the mess ups and all that sort of stuff, and you're deciding which take you do, because what you don't see is me saying the same thing 6 times. I shouldn't say that, it's not 6 times. It's usually like 2 or 3 times that I'll say the exact same thing, like the exact same paragraph. And if I get it 3 times flawlessly with using different inflections, we'll figure out which one's the best one and then use that one. So after that edit is done, and that's just a monster edit,
Right.
then you're just adjusting the little stuff. That's where the overlays, that's where the title cards, that's where the little effects come in, the pictures and all that sort of stuff. Trying to get yourself in the right headspace of being like, I filmed myself doing this. There's nothing there. I'm filming myself doing this, trusting that later me will put a picture there.
Yeah.
And it's just little things like that. That's the fun edit, because that's where, like, there are so many jokes, and I talked about this beforehand, because there are jokes in my bioessentialism video that like no one got, that were just for me.
Right.
Like, and the one that I point out is there's a part where I talk about Robert Howard, creator of Conan the Barbarian, and I put up a picture of Vincent D'Onofrio. Because in 1994, I think, 1996, he was in a movie called The Whole Wide World, which is a biopic of Robert Howard, where he plays Robert Howard.
Oh. Okay.
So, like,
nobody
that's a
picked up
deep
on
cut.
that.
Nobody got it. That's how obscure my references are.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, there's a point in the video where a picture of just Vincent D'Onofrio appears for like 10 to 15 seconds, and then it switches to the actual picture of Robert Howard after a little caption goes, wait a minute, that's not the right picture.
See, and that stuff I think is so important for your sanity, because you need to be able to put your actual, personality into it. The way you're talking about how perfect every single shot has to be, it's unnatural. It's okay, it's good, it makes better content. There's no argument there, but I feel like watching it back can feel a little bit sterile to yourself, because you've almost been so numbed to it. You say that same paragraph 3 times. It's like saying a word like spatula 16 times. After a while, it loses meaning. And when you can now, in your editing process, put back your personality and put back the little stuff that, sure, maybe it only means something to you, it now becomes your video. Even if it always has been, now it's like almost reclaiming it a little.
Uh-oh. Now the folks are starting to trickle in here. I'm sorry, the chat is becoming populated with some of the usual suspects. I see Jamie Wolf coming in. Unimportant hero, fellow YouTuber.
Hey.
You should subscribe to Unimportant Hero.
I am subscribed to Unimportant Hero.
That's because you're a good person. I'm not saying that subscribing to Unimportant Hero, or not subscribing to Unimportant Hero, makes you a bad person. It's just that only bad people don't subscribe to Oh, good gravy. Umbral Knight, Stefan Huddleston, you joining us here as well. People are making their way to YouTube. There's a part of me that's just like, they like me. They really like me. I gotta do more voices in the videos. Like, I think people just, like, literally, well, obviously this is how I talk, so. But I love doing voices. I love doing voices in D&D. I love doing voices in RPG games. I think it's some of the juice. And it's I don't know. I feel like I don't utilize that as much. I really love doing like the villain acting from my complex villain episode. Um, I thought that was a lot of fun. But and yes, so Jamie Wolf here, in chat. I don't know if you see that. They are my resident Michael Moorcock. Anytime you have heard Michael Moorcock being quoted, in one of my videos, Jamie Wolf.
Ah.
Um, so I guess this talk has gone into the realm of content creation, what it feels like to be a smaller to moderate
Hey,
content creator.
I mean, I definitely do not consider myself, and I don't think anybody would consider our show to be in the upper echelon, but you know, I'm just not going to say that we're not large. We're definitely not. And it doesn't really matter because that doesn't determine quality by any means.
Okay. Let me ask if this happens to you. Do you have people ever, I don't know in the podcast realm if like your audience can see your numbers.
Not at all, actually. And I think that for podcasting, that's an interesting aspect. It's very hush hush between other podcasters, where people are kind of afraid to talk about their numbers because they're worried that it'll give people a perception of them in one way or the other. And maybe it's just because if you can hide it, then do, because you know, who needs to know that stuff. But we've been kind of switching over to YouTube mainly because our editor likes being on YouTube. They like doing video editing, and it's still the podcast format. It's, you know, hour and a half long, so it's not going to be an explosion on YouTube, because that's not what people go to YouTube for. They go for, you know, 10 to maybe 20-minute videos at most. Though I always seem to find myself watching like 45-minute video essays, because I do love that. Yeah, it's subscribe to LegalKimchi.
We support long form video essays here in this
Yes.
channel. Okay.
100%. So that's been really interesting, because it is just a total switch. Like, now our numbers are public, and you know, we've got our YouTube numbers, we've got our podcast numbers. I can combine them up in my head, but they are different. And that's again, just the podcasting scene in general seems to be very hush hush on numbers. It's not something that's talked about or shared between people.
Yeah, you know, it's always been fascinating to me. Like the YouTube scene is the complete opposite. Everybody talks about numbers all the time.
Because they give you so many.
And they do. And they're like, there's this whole dashboard where you're just like, oh, by the way, people stopped watching after you said this.
Yep.
Really? Like, because there are line graphs where it's like, hey, no.
Yep. Like, hey, here's your drop-offs.
Yeah.
Hope you can justify them, because you have to live and die by those.
Oh yeah. Like and for me, like I've gotten into a rhythm that I've noticed in the last few videos, because it used to be like, oh, you had a spike here and then a drop off, and then you spiked here and then a drop off, and then a spiked here and then a drop off. Since what I would say the turn in my channel was, and I think everybody kind of knows what that is. It's when I did the wheelchair accessibility video. Like there seems to have been a shift right there, intentional.
Yeah.
But since then, my drop off is the initial drop off.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that every YouTube video has.
Yeah.
And then it's just like straight lines. It's straight lines. So basically, if you make it like 2 minutes into the video, I got you.
But now it's all about, and this is the thing, again, with so many numbers, and myself being what I will call an optimizer. It doesn't just affect my D&D games, it affects literally everything I do. If you give me all of these numbers, I'm going to kind of obsess over how to make small number go up.
It's
like
hard not to.
Yeah.
It's hard not to. Like, I'm sitting here in the aftermath of making the bioessentialism video and not knowing exactly why that, as opposed to any of my other videos, exploded. I have an inkling, but it's like I don't have any solid answers.
Is it title? Is it topic? Is it thumbnail?
Yeah.
Is it somebody, the right person shared it? Who knows?
Yeah, and Jamie, you got the right idea, turning off all the numbers and just letting it go. Because, like, I'm in a boat where being realistic, there's no way that YouTube becomes my job. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like, reasonably. Like my channel would have to explode to levels that I don't know if I'm there.
Yeah. Nope, totally get that.
And, like, I saw somebody posting, because I follow a bunch of other YouTubers and smaller level channels, very friendly with each other and all that sort of stuff. But they were like, hey, I'm so close. If I just get a few new Patreon people, I can quit my job. And I was like, I would know.
It's also, I mean, stability is a thing as well. And that stuff can just evaporate overnight. I mean, maybe not that quickly unless you did something actually bad, but in general, that's a hard thing to rely on. YouTube is not a 401k. It's not building up a career unless you're one of the select few.
Yeah, and what kind of separates me from a lot of these content creators that I talk to is I have kids, and I'm not going to sit here and just say that, like, kids are the most important thing in the world and all that sort of stuff. Kids are my choice. They're my choice to have kids and all that sort of stuff. But and if you don't want to have kids, don't have kids. Easy as that. I like them. You don't have to. But, like, I can't imagine. Like, I would have to have some incredibly solid, like, coffee or Patreon numbers to even consider that. And even then, there would be this tickle in the back of my brain of constantly, like, can I keep it up? Can I keep doing it? Can I keep making things that people like? And I think that my only goal right now is to get an audience the size of which like enjoys my stuff, so that, like, I don't know, I don't even know what my numerical goals are. Like, right now I'm just having fun doing it,
Right. And that's the point. I mean, this is, at the end of the day, a hobby. And though the numbers are exciting and it's fun to, like, see that, it's fun to see them go up, fun to imagine the idea of just like, wow, I wish I had this large community. I think at the end of the day, most people are would much rather prefer, and I say most people would much rather prefer, a small, tight-knit group of people that you just legitimately recognize and pull away from that parasocial relationship. Because once you get to a large enough size, that's the only way to continue growing, is to kind of foster that parasocial relationship, but instead just actually build genuine connections with people who have similar ideas. And that's what we're all after, right? We're all after community as people. That's not a new facet of humankind just because we have the internet. We just have a new way to establish that community and get our voices out there.
Absolutely. Like, it's funny to me because, like, the reason why I want people to kind of catch my stuff is more about the stuff, because I feel like the things that I'm talking about should be discussed, and I
Right.
like throwing in my 2 cents into all of those different things. So I don't know. It's just wild to me. Like, the content creation and social media is this frontier, and I have witnessed in the last year, in the last 6 months, maybe even the last 4 months or so, two different channels, two completely separate channels, explode. Months and months and months of nothing, or moderate, right? And then almost literally overnight went from 100, maybe 1,000 subscribers to 100,000 subscribers. Two separate channels that happened to. Neither of the creators who made those channels have any idea why it happened. Like,
Flash in the pan.
they have no idea. Like, one of them is this guy. He's been making media reviews and things like that, and he did a video on Bo Burnham and white liberal existential dread, I think is the video.
I watched that. That was really good.
Yeah.
That was really good.
Because the algorithm was just like, you know what? I choose you, Pikachu, and just took off, and that channel exploded.
Mm-hmm.
And that guy has no idea why. He's been making these.
I've been watching because of that video. I've been watching his stuff. It's great.
But he's been making consistently good stuff for weeks and months, maybe even a year now. None of it blew up. I think there's a whole discussion about the fact that a video essay of a black man speaking about a white guy is what blew up. There's probably some sociological things to unpack in that circumstance.
Yeah. At least a couple.
So,
how about this? I'll put a hopefully positive spin on it. Maybe it's not going to come off that way, but I'll try. I think it's the fact that a lot of the people who resonated with that Bo Burnham special, the Inside special, are generally people who are going to gravitate towards a lot of the thought processes that YouTuber had, and they wanted to see like, oh, what is the actual like other side of this perspective. And again, the people who enjoyed that content originally are the people who are now trying, a lot of them now trying to seek out these other opinions, and to put it in the terms of Bo Burnham, shut the F up for 20 minutes and listen to somebody else who has actually experienced it. So hopefully that's the reason behind it. I know it's not like it was a brand new thought for me, but that was definitely a lot of why I initially wanted to see it, and just be like, okay, I understand that Bo Burnham is very much geared towards white people, 100%. And kind of wanted to see like what is the other side of the opinion, and just that kind of breakdown. It was, in that specific instance, I know I clicked, and I can only speak for myself because I do love Bo Burnham and have been following him since I was in middle school, and have grown along with him. And like, that YouTuber touched on all of those points, and it was just like very much resonated with somebody like who it was targeted towards, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was like right video, right time, like good response. But even then, there are so many video responses to the Inside special. Why was it that one specifically? Because that one blew up. It almost has 1 million views at this point, when his other videos had like 1,000. Obviously, his other videos have tens of thousands now because of what you said. People like you, people like me, who saw that video, was like, oh wow, this guy has some pretty good content. Let's watch everything else he's ever touched.
Right.
And I get that sometimes in a smaller scale. And I talked about this beforehand. It's like, people leave comments on my channel where it's just like, wow, this is really good. How do you only have 600 subscribers and 2,600 views on this video. Um, web captioner is so finicky. Thank you, Unimportant Hero. But like, there's a part of me, I can't remember what movie it's from, where I'm just like, I don't know how any of this is working. Like, because you're like, how is your channel so small? I don't know. I don't know why it's small. I don't know why it would ever get big.
Yeah.
I don't understand how that works.
Well, if it was a clear-cut thing, then people wouldn't have literal jobs to figure out these things and figure out what is going to be successful and what can potentially take off and be viral.
Yeah.
It's a crapshoot. It is.
Like, the other one was a channel where, have you ever heard of Thought Slime?
I think I have, but please give context.
Thought Slime leftist video essays, right? They do like funny insult pieces on usually far right wing talking points and stuff like that, right? Making fun of Ben Shapiro, the kind of standard stuff.
Sure.
They have this section in a lot of their videos where they end it with something called eyeballs, and they showcase a smaller content creator. Now, generally speaking, that boosts somebody from 1,000 or a few hundred to maybe 1,000, 2,000 subscribers, right? Consistently. Most of the creators after the boost get up to like 1 to 5,000, right? Nothing to shake, nothing to
shake a stick at.
Shake a stick at,
yeah.
But not phenomenally. And I was watching one, and that video did pretty well, the one that was viewed, and then her like next 3 videos all did like phenomenally, and she has 100,000 subscribers now, and she quit her job because she had enough people on Patreon support her when she was getting those numbers that she could. To which I say, more power to you.
Yeah.
But like, she had this whole tweet thread after it happened where she's like, I have no idea why my channel exploded and no one else's did. Like, all these other people who have been getting the same boost from this content creator, nothing. And she's to the point where she's almost half of his numbers at this point.
Wow.
Over the course of 2 months. Like, that was
right.
And the 2 videos that have done the best for me personally on my channel, both were shouted out by Jen Kretschmer. And like, the only thing I can think of is her boost. And it's weird for me because we always mention the whole like, comment, subscribe thing, because every time you do that, every time you like the video, every time you comment in the comment section under a video, like, I literally see a boost when that happens. Every single time a group of people comment on a video that I've made, I will notice that one like plinks up after they make the comment. So they've already seen it. They've already plinked their numbers, and even if it's just 1 or 2, it'll be like boop boop boop, but they comment and it'll drop back down to normal after a bit. Yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
Stefan. It's true of so many things. Chance.
But YouTube as well just has a very big snowball effect, as that is the entire point of YouTube, is to get you to continue watching YouTube. So it is good as that. The algorithm, as fickle and difficult to understand as it is, seems like it more or less works at getting people to continue watching. So I mean, I think it's a lot of times you see it pick up. I mean, it just has such a meaningless statement, but it has the right combination of things to just make it snowball. And somebody comments, great, shows up in another person's recommended, they click it because of the thumbnail or the title or whatever entices them, and that just keeps inflating it. I mean, that's the long and short of it.
Yeah.
It's as complicated as it can be and as simple as it can be.
Absolutely. I mean, it's I don't know. It's fascinating, and it's one of those things where anytime I hear somebody saying like, "I never thought my channel could do this," I always think to myself, that's partially true. There's always a part, like there's two conflicting parts of your brain, right? There's the part of your brain that's like, this channel's not gonna blow up. Let's be realistic. You're gonna get maybe a little bit of a following. Cool, whatever. Move on. But then there's that other part of your brain, right? It's just like, it could happen though, right?
Right.
And it's sometimes you're just pushing that. It's funny because like in most other things, I'm an incredibly positive, optimistic individual, but that particular voice, I almost feel like I have to suppress that voice. Be like, calm down. um, you know, and you have these moments that happen that blow you away. For me recently, it was kind of a cataclysmic event happened. I don't know if you saw this, but so Matt Mercer followed me on Twitter.
Oh, okay.
And
I did not see that.
I'm like, why? I don't understand that. And like there was a moment where my brain is just like, what is going on here? Because that's beyond anything that I thought would happen.
Right.
I literally never thought that was going to happen. That I can say in full honesty, like even the back of my brain that's just like, yay, the channel, it can explode. I didn't think that would happen. But yeah, content creation is a weird thing. We got a weird subject matter today. We should be talking about some D&D, right?
It's all because you said like, comment, and subscribe.
It's which reminds me, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe.
Oh no.
And hit the bell icon so you can be notified when a new video drops, or when I go on a live stream.
Or after the Twitch switch.
After the Twitch switch. It's like buying lotto tickets. You do it 5-6 times a year. No, you're not gonna win. To get to dream, but you might.
I totally relate to that. I mean, every other Thursday we're able to post our content on the subreddit D&D Next, and that is a place where D&D nerds get together and talk about the crunchiness of D&D. Most of the time. Sometimes they argue about dumb stuff. It's Reddit. That's the way it works. But every time we post on there, we see a significant increase in listens when that post does well. And every single Thursday that comes up, it's just waiting around and clicking that refresh, hoping that today's the day that it gets some traction. And we generally see, an uptick for the next couple of weeks because that video does well or that post does well. And, feeds the cycle. It's all a loop.
It's like I'm working on, and Drew Winters in chat, love your YouTube icon, by the way, the laughing man from Ghost in the Shell standalone complex, which I don't watch anime, but Ghost in the Shell.
That's not anime. That one's art.
That transcends. That transcends.
Yeah. Both humanity and anime.
Yeah. It's oh, it's just so good. But put into chat, and Lamont writes about that in Bird by Bird. She expects every book to bomb and destroy her career, and simultaneously expects it to win her the Nobel Prize. Yeah, I fully believe, and this is not being pessimistic. This is not me being, trying to be down on myself. I fully anticipate this next video that I'm going to make is not going to do nearly as well. If it does, I will be shocked. But there is a voice in the back of my head that's like, I mean, it could.
Right.
It's like, what was the what's the movie? I can't remember, where the kid's just like, it could happen. Like there is that in the back of my brain. Unimportant Hero says studies which look at big art careers, people end up in museums in aggregate, are largely finding that belonging to a specific social circle is the greatest predictor for success. Yeah, I actually knew a guy who was who had paintings at the Houston Museum of Modern Art while we were in high school,
Whoa.
like senior year in high school. And first it was a showcase for like, high school artists and so that sort of thing. So you can kind of say, oh, well, then it wasn't. Like his second painting wasn't.
Oh.
Um, and it was a phenomenal painting. It was a painting of a teddy bear smoking.
Now I want to
Um,
see this.
I don't know if I can find it. But I spoke to him, and he went to the Rhode Island School of Design, um, which is a phenomenal art school in the Northeast. And I was like, Eric, what is it about the art scene? Like, I don't get why paintings become popular and why they don't. He's like, a lot of it, and this is how he talked. A lot of it is like how much you, as a painter, can just bullshit the meaning of the painting when somebody asks you. I lost it. I completely I just broke down. I couldn't stop giggling. He was a hilarious guy, just generally. Sat next to me in English, a really good friend of mine. Because he's like, I painted the teddy bear with the cigarette. I thought it was funny.
Right.
Somebody asked me about it, and I was like, well, it is the transition of comfort devices throughout lifetime with something pure, but ultimately these comfort devices lead to our own self-destruction. And so I'm trying to capture the essence of comfort and self-destruction that is humanity. I was like, that sounds good.
Yeah.
I just made that up, man.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I remember I had a friend who did not have any of her art posted in any museums, but a lot of our conversations around why she found art so frustrating is because every time she would draw something in our, say relatively tame high school, it would be absurd, and she liked the absurd drawings, and people would always be like, what is that, what's that about? And she goes, I just wanted to draw a titty monster, like that's what I like drawing, and this is fun for me. And it frustrated her to the point that she really stopped doing any art. Like drawing as a whole became this really big kind of crippling thing to her, because I think she felt like it had to have meaning. And I think it's true that, as you're saying, in order to build almost like a brand for yourself, yes, there does need to be some meaning to it. And I don't know, it's funny to hear that. It's like, even, most artists, when self-aware enough, are just like, yeah, I mean, you just kind of BS it and see where it ends up.
I was in this weird situation, and this goes, I want to mention two things that were brought up in chat, one right after the other. One of the things was people in chat have been talking about the social structure and how that can dictate your success in the art world. He was from what I would consider a lower upper class family. So they had money, because my high school district ran through like 2 or 3 moderate, lower middle class neighborhoods, and ran into a hyper rich neighborhood where like Charles Barkley and Scottie Pippen, when they played for the Houston Rockets, lived. Like if they had high school kids, they would have went to my high school. And that was bizarre, because my parents moved there when there was like nobody in that area. Like that area of Houston was so wildly underdeveloped that it was just so cheap to get land out there. And so they bought a house like back in 1990 or something like that. and or 1983, and by 2000, it had become this like hustle and bustle, hyper rich area. So like he came from a lot of money. Now, a couple of things that I wanted to bring up in chat, Jared, um, is something that I try to be mindful of. Okay,
I'm seeing that
you
right
see
now
that?
as well. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, and it's one of
Let's
those
talk
things
about it.
where we try to like I've been trying to remove ableist language from my own vocabulary, slowly but surely, and it's very difficult, especially when you don't even think about it. It just comes
Right.
out, right? Um, what has made me, what kind of tipped me off on this journey, and I spoke about this before. I wish this wasn't the instigator. I wish I started doing this just because I was trying to be a better person. But um, what really started me off on this was my son. So my son's disabled, and I was like, wait a minute, I have to reevaluate my like the way that I'm thinking about the world, even to the language that I'm using, because
Hmm.
I don't want to inadvertently insult my own kid,
Right.
um, because of that. So, um, yeah, just little parts of like language there, um, and trying to shift that away, and it got me thinking about more than just necessarily ableist language, um, but also like insulting people in general, and why we cling to certain words and phrases to be able to insult people, you know and I've been in discussions with individuals about like where they're like, I want to be able to insult someone, and just like take a second to think about like that sentiment.
Right.
you know um but there's I don't know. Look, I've said my piece about it. You see what's going on in chat there. Do you have any thoughts about that, or anything you'd like to share on that?
Yeah. I mean, the I guess the question of where does the desire to insult people come from? Generally, the easy answer is from a place of insecurity, but I don't think that ableist language specifically comes from that, and that's almost like a deeper rooted problem in just how language has evolved, almost.
Yeah, that's I should I should remedy that. Those are two different topics that I just brought up.
That's true. Yeah.
Um, it's just with one of them, it's just like I anticipated the response being like, "Oh, okay, I won't do that. Sorry about that."
Right.
And the other one,
Oh,
so I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
the other
That.
one I thought is like, oh, like because when it comes to like ableist language, like the utilization of language that Chad had brought up, and I'm
Mhm.
like staring over here because this is where you guys or you folks in chat are over here, and like you're over here in this anyway big screen. Um, so but when it comes to like the utilization and of ableist language, and I mean, I've spoken to you before. I know how you speak, how you get an idea of how your brain operates when discussing these sorts of things. I didn't anticipate that your response would be like, "Well, I should be able to use that type of language."
Oh yeah, of
So,
course not. Of course not. Yeah. Say I can say it actively of my bad. It's definitely something that yeah, there's so much rooted in my language just from, upbringing and what was normal and learning that that's not true. It's not normal or it shouldn't be normal and fighting against that is an active thing,
mhm.
and there's always room for improvement on that. So it's I above all appreciate that I can look over and it's not a call for violence in any way. It's just like, hey, that does put people down, or that language is, it's giving off a meaning that you're not intending.
Mhm.
So you don't need to do it.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just seeing that and just going like, you know what? it's good. It's good to see.
Mm-hmm.
It's a learning process, and we shouldn't ever stop learning or trying to get better on that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You know, it's one of those things where it's like, I've seen this from the other side, with regards to my mixed race video specifically. Okay. And because in that video, I call out the fact that there is language utilized in D&D, and just generally, that I would consider a slur and that I find very hurtful when it's said. And I got a lot of pushback on that online. And that to me was a huge wake-up call. Now I was already trying to alter my language, because Sam, aka Pronouns in My Bio, who is my head mod of all of my stuff.
Just all your stuff, everything.
All of it. Discord, Twitch, the whole nine. Has no issue whatsoever calling me out.
Sure. That's good. Good to have somebody like that around.
Fantastic. Okay. Don't get me wrong. This is something everyone needs. Like, I almost wish I had a pocket Sam that I could take with me that just jumps out of the pocket, slaps me in the face, says, stop doing that.
Yeah.
Goes back into the pocket.
You can make a lot of money off that, actually. Just gotta find a way.
If I could distill like a 6-inch Sam and just clone him over and over again, just sell him to people. That's my secondary income. That's how I quit my job for YouTube right there.
Pocket Sam.
Pocket Sam. Moderate your life. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong. But like, I remember one of the first times I was using ableist language, and they're just like, hey, don't do that. And they were very they were very kind about it. But with Sam, there's always a tone of like, because if you don't change, the hugs will get violent.
And that, I'm assuming, comes from a place of friendship and built up rapport. Yeah. You know, it's important still.
Thinking about Sam makes me chuckle. A wonderful human being. So, worst Jiminy Cricket, best Jiminy Cricket. But, you know, it was one of those things where the first time somebody called me out on specifically sanist language, which is where you kind of wantonly use words like, oh, that's crazy, or whatever. Right. I don't even like saying it now because of, you know, the education that I've received from my own chat.
You're learning. Good. I hope to learn too.
We're all trying to grow.
Right.
But first time I heard it, I'm perfectly honest with you, first time I heard it, I was like, that's silly. That's a thing? Are you kidding me? I didn't say anything at that moment.
Right.
I was just like, okay, there's a reason. Like, my initial reaction is, this is silly. I'm probably wrong. I'm getting this weird feeling in my brain where I don't like my initial reaction to this. That's not normal. There was a cognitive dissonance happening. And so I was like, okay, Kimchi, shut up. Wait. Don't say anything. Just comply. This person is upset. You want to be respectful. Be respectful. Do that first. Take some time to think about it.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think, you know, again, it a lot of it does come from the initial approach. I think a lot of good intention can get muddled, but most of the time that I have heard people take that self-reflection which is important, and it takes a certain level of ability to self-reflect that some people are at different points with. But most of the time that I see it turn successful is times where the person who brings it up isn't even trying to, it's not trying to call them out. It's not trying to shut them down, or even being, for lack of a better word, just being mad about it. It's very much so like as this idea of we can all help each other grow, because we might not all know what's, I'll say right and wrong. That's again probably not the best choice of words, because right and wrong, yeah, whatever.
Respectful or disrespectful?
Thank you for helping me out there. Yeah, so we don't know that something we're saying is disrespectful. So very much so coming from that idea of like the assumption that the other person wants to grow until we are proven otherwise is, I think, really important in this learning process we're all going through and will continue going through.
And let's just pull it out there, like the amount of appreciation that should be provided to those people who do that, because having been on that perspective of, having the, hey, could you not in a nice way, and having that come to me where somebody says, hey, could you please stop doing that, it's hurtful to individuals, all that sort of stuff. I've been on both sides of that. And when you're making the suggestion, even though you're trying to phrase it in just the kindest way, you're walking through a minefield, because you have no idea if this person's going to respond and just be like, what? And then not only did you just get into a confrontational situation that you weren't looking for, you're just like, hey, stop saying bad thing. It takes almost no effort on your part, and it would make me feel a lot better. But you can also like hit this point where you don't know if that person is just going to rage at you and get super defensive.
Right.
Because, I mean, we see that happening on Twitter all the time.
Twitter is such a public format, though, so it doesn't surprise me as much. And that's one of the best and worst parts of Twitter. Because I feel like when people have it seen on Twitter, it's very much like a public call out. And I don't think everybody reacts well to that. I mean, honestly, I've gotten into situations, well, probably like a single situation, where I got myself into just a bad conversation because I spoke in a way that I was like, oh, that wasn't my initial intention. And, now I've got random people I've never met or talked to in my entire life calling me all sorts of names. And it's this, I can very easily see how people then entrench themselves and, double down or whatever, get angry about it. I didn't, because I just realized I made a mistake and, hey, let's try and move on from it. That usually is the best way to handle things when you make a mistake, is to acknowledge it and, move on, try and learn from that mistake. But again, it's very easy just to double down.
Yeah. I think I know what situation you're talking about.
Oh, really?
I remember.
It was just one time, I think, so far in my 3 years, and it was just like, whoa, hey, that's not what I meant. Bye. Sorry. Yeah. I apologize.
Yeah. But and it's one of those things where both the people reacting and the people saying stuff, I mean, we sometimes forget. Like, we get into this mentality that something like Twitter, that something like YouTube, something like these avenues are just like, I'm just talking to my friends, with something that's permanent and can be read by anyone on the internet.
Right.
And half the time with larger channels, especially, or larger or more known individuals, there's sometimes a question is like, do they, like, even if you tag them, would they even see it?
Right.
Do they ignore most of that stuff? It's a whole thing. I just keep thinking to myself, this conversation keeps going to these wild different tangents. D&D. That's a game.
Dungeons and Dragons.
Came out in
Yes.
1974, and we're two males, guys. I don't know, um, cis gendered individuals,
It's true.
um, POCs. You said you were.
Yeah. See, I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know. Is there a threshold to like make claims to things? As I said, I feel culturally, I wasn't brought up in. I think my father, who recently passed away, so I've been kind of going through a lot of his history.
Hmm.
I think he rejected it, like intentionally rejected a lot of his heritage, which then left me now kind of devoid of it. And I don't know what claim I have to my heritage, and that's a thing that I have not fully processed.
Let me be, in a small way, your guide. As a person who was raised in a culture, and it's funny to me because we're both sort of in a circumstance where we are trying to capture a part of ourselves, a part of our cultures that we feel like we missed out on, especially in our childhood. I wanted to make sure that I put that in chat, Cosmo and Commander, to let you know that I did see you were there. But
I
we were
got
just
so.
flow of conversation. But where's my captions? There we go. Captioner. Anyway, because like I'm trying to embrace my Puerto Rican heritage. You're kind of in a similar boat, okay? Where you feel like, because my dad is an individual who kind of denied it for most of his life. Well, you can almost say he was ashamed of it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, whenever we ask about, you know, what's our ethnic background, he would say, well, we're from Spain. And I was like, wait a minute. Because I grew up thinking, because of this, that my grandparent, like my grandfather, was born in Spain.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I mean, he kept talking about how it was direct connection and all that sort of stuff. And I don't know if he told me that with intent, or if it was a circumstance where, like, I made it up in my own head based on what he was saying. But I just thought that my grandfather was born in Spain. No. Born and raised in Puerto Rico. His father was born and raised in Puerto Rico. It's not until you get to, like, my grandfather's grandfather that you get to the folks who were born in Spain. So my grandfather, who born and raised in Puerto Rico, grew up learning how to use a machete and cutting the, cutting sugarcane. Sort of the classic, stereotypical, what do people do in Puerto Rico thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? Still had a wicked machete to the day he died, and was unbelievably strong from just the labor of his life. But I mean, he was, by any stretch of the imagination, Puerto Rican. My grandmother was actually descendant from native Puerto Ricans, Taino. And I grew up not having that direct connection to the Puerto Rican side of my heritage. And I've been slowly trying to get
Mm-hmm.
into it, listening to the music, eating the food, understanding more of the culture. Now, here's the thing. You don't have to be an expert in your own culture. How many things, like, there are British people who don't know Doctor Who. And I know that's kind of a silly analogy to use, but like you go down the street, how many people can you ask about the Civil War and they won't know the reason why it happened? How many people you ask who was the second president of the United States would have no idea about the history of this country? How many people that you ask would have a only moderate understanding of American football, and you think of that as ingrained into American culture? You don't need any of that to be American. Okay, you don't need to know all of the dates and details. You don't know how to function. Oh, the baseball is this national sport. I don't know the inside fly rule. Um, yeah, that doesn't matter. You're still an American, right? What I've come to understand is my being Puerto Rican is not dependent upon um, my understanding of, you know, reggaeton or my love of lechon or, you know, eating bacalao or whatever. it's it's something that I connect with. It's something that is part of the generations of my family that I'm trying to reconnect with. Okay?
Right.
And you don't lose your connection just because you got it later. So if you are trying to pursue, yeah, it was John Adams. Um I think I can get to like six. I think I can name the first six presidents before I start getting.
I think I'm at 2 and I'm out.
Oh, okay. Um, but I don't think there is a metric or a requirement that you have to have learned it from birth.
Sure.
Okay, that doesn't mean you're going to be, if someone's asking for a Dominican sensitivity reader, that's you,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
No, maybe not. Okay,
Right.
that's fine. Maybe if somebody's writing, uh, you know, something about the Dominican Republic, they're not necessarily going to ask you about it and all that sort of stuff. But that doesn't take away the fact that you are Dominican. Okay, my lack of knowledge of like the history and culture of Puerto Rico does not take away from my being Puerto Rican. It just means I got more to learn. Okay, don't hire me as your Puerto Rican sensitivity consultant. I won't know how to respond to that. Okay, but that doesn't mean I'm not Puerto Rican.
Sure.
And that kind of hit me because, and I'm going to make an announcement here. What's funny is that's the Twitch announcement. That's my Twitch alerts are coming through. Anyway, I'm wondering if that person who just followed me on Twitch was just like, but he's not here.
Yeah.
The tweet says he should be here.
Looking around
Um, but I was saying, oh, talking about sensitivity reading, I have the okay to announce this. For anyone in the audience who has heard of an elf and an orc have a little baby, I have actually been hired on that team to be a sensitivity reader about mixed race ethnicities. So
Congrats.
yay. I'm gonna have
That's
my name
awesome.
in a book.
That's awesome. And I know that's something that you're passionate about. As we talked a lot about that when I had you on my show, about how you integrated that into your D&D world and made sure and do make sure to put a lot of care into that intertwining, as well as just trying to represent what, from what you told me, your heritage. So that's really cool. That's awesome.
Yeah,
I'm glad you got that opportunity.
Super excited about it. But see, I use that to bring it up as like, that is something that not only is my lived experience from childhood, where I've experienced the sort of cultural salad that is growing up like that. And just gone through that experience from my life, from discrimination to, joys. But I've also done research on it.
Yeah.
And the whole reason that I came to the attention of these folks is because they saw my video on it. I was like, oh, this person's thought a lot about this, because I've thought a lot about this. And so, like that to me, like it there's a part of me, if I'm being honest, like every time I hear someone say something like what you just said, that, yeah, like technically speaking, I'm this, but I don't know if I really am because I was just raised in a way alienated from any like authentic part of my culture or whatever. That makes me sad, because I think that that is a mentality of like blood purity that it infects the way, maybe infects not the right word. It just burrows in to your brain and takes something away from you that shouldn't be taken away.
Sure.
Your culture, your heritage, your background is a part of you, and you should be able to embrace it. And that's all it is. You should be able to embrace it, right?
And that makes sense, and that's, I think, pretty clear. I think to me it's more of the idea that I feel as if I try to play off that, or not even play off, it feels straight up just like that you're an imposter to some extent, and this isn't like the normal imposter syndrome of, I'm working on something and I feel like I'm not actually good at it, but yes, I am actually pretty good. It's more of that there are legitimate struggles that I kind of associate with considering yourself a specific race or heritage or what have you. Not using the right word, apologize, but that I just feel like I don't have. And so in that way, it almost feels disingenuous to come out and say like, yes, this is my heritage, and I identify with this, when again there's none of that cultural upbringing, there's none of the, honestly, the downsides of it. And it very much can, to me, feels like it can just be this disingenuous thing to come out and say like, yes, I have this and I associate with this, because it almost feels like, I guess the best way to put it can feel like it is used as a advantage or as like almost an attention seeking thing. And that's what I like have internalized, is that like if I go out and I say that yes, I'm Dominican, it's because I'm saying it because I need the attention of that, and I don't deserve to say that.
You see, that's bizarre to me. I think that's a mentality that being like BIMPOC or part of a marginalized community or being a POC is trauma, is the negativity that comes with it.
Yeah.
And that's a poison mentality.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue with that at all. And that's why I said it's a lot that I'm still processing.
Like,
so
just because you are not facing necessarily the hardship does not mean you can't embrace the joy. Heck, I think more people should just embrace the joy of POCs generally, or any marginalized community. We talk about how much POCs get the extra love when they're being crapped on, but when they're just doing their thing, no one cares.
right.
That's again just like only embracing it because of the trauma. It's identifying it with trauma. It's like the and that's, I don't know, that takes the joy away from it, because when I talk about my cultural references, where I talk about my being Korean, when I talk about embracing my Latine ancestry, culture, whatever you want to call it,
Sure.
I'm trying to embrace the joy of it. Okay, because I think that's distinct. Okay, and that's the thing when we're talking about like culture, we're talking about race and things of that nature. There are things that I can't change. Like there are things that people will say or react to me because of my skin color, because of the way my eyes are shaped and my hair is. I can't really do anything about that. But as a mixed race individual, what's bizarre about that circumstance is that the preconceived notions that they have and the negativity that I receive are, one, not from people who have an issue with my ethnicity. They don't know what it is. No one's ever guessed correctly. So, it's like, it's kind of a circumstance where it's like, They're not mad at me because I'm Korean. They have no idea that I'm Korean.
Right.
Okay? That trauma is, I don't want to say that it's negative, necessarily unrelated to my culture, but it kind of isn't in a lot of ways. Um, the odd part about that is the times that it is related, more often than not, is from the group itself. It's Korean people who are just like,
Interesting.
you're not really Korean, you're not Korean enough, or whatever. It's an internal thing, not an external thing. It's not the trauma of the out groups coming in, it's the trauma of the in groups pushing out. Um, but make sure I'm still on non-DMCA music. Okay. And there is, and I mentioned this in a tweet thread recently when I was talking about that D&D actual play that whitewashed a character, because that's the way you solve that problem.
I'm not aware of this, but keep going.
Yeah, it was a D&D live play. They had a white player playing a POC character, and they were like, hey, I just have it really low. You can probably hear it now, but it was a little loud, so lowered the volume on the music. I get super paranoid even with its low music. Anyway, but so the actual play had that situation. Person was like, hey, as a white person, I should not be playing a POC. I disagree with that notion, but I get where they're coming from. Whatever. You can have an argument as to whether or not a white player can play a POC person in a role-playing game. I think that's a valid discussion that you can have. But the way they tried to solve it was not like, hey, I'm going to make a new character. It was, I'm going to lighten the skin of the character that I have and take his culture away.
Oh, that's not right. that's the wrong move.
Somebody knew that. Somebody
Yeah.
should have known that.
Yeah.
So it's, well, I forgot where I was going with that point. Why I brought that up. Oh, I mentioned there that part of the reason why that's so terrible is that it is emblematic of the actual pressure that POCs feel to eliminate their culture, to assimilate into quote-unquote white society. Oh, Stefan, I'm glad you missed that. I'm glad that you missed that entire thing on Twitter. You're probably a better person for it. But because you're now feeling guilty because your parents probably were trying to make sure that you avoided some of that trauma, right?
Right.
So they actively were like my parents didn't want to continue speaking to me in Korean or Spanish for that matter. My father's fluent in Spanish, my mother's fluent in Korean, because they didn't want me to have an accent. And now I grew up being like, I'm ashamed I can't speak.
Yeah. That's exactly where I'm at with Spanish, where I'm now over the last 4 months in kind of this trying to reconnect. I've been teaching or trying to learn Spanish because I had an instance where I met a lot of my family from the DR and they couldn't speak English at all. And I was now having this, where before it was a literal physical barrier, now I had this extreme language barrier that we couldn't connect in any way as much as I wanted to, or at the time, admittedly didn't want to, because there was this extra barrier to get through that they weren't really able to speak English. I wasn't really able to speak Spanish. It's an uncomfortable thing to be at a table with people and having everyone go, oh, talk. And it's like, I can't. And I just feel,
Mm-hmm.
lost. I mean, there's nothing that you can do.
Yeah.
And a lot of that has been pushing me to, try and learn Spanish. And I kind of look back and wonder, my father, who was fluent in Spanish, lived in the Dominican Republic for, I think, 2 or so years, did one point, and grew up with at least a bit of that culture, being able to speak with family members and everything. There was a very deliberate effort to not speak Spanish in our household. And then, once I'm older, my father's like, "Why aren't you able to speak Spanish?" It's like, well, why do you think?
You.
Yeah, like, why do
It's
you think?
like my father's generation. He has 5 brothers and sisters. The eldest 3 speak Spanish. The youngest 3 don't. So, like, that transition happened in his generation, and it just filtered in mine. I don't speak Spanish. My partner speaks Spanish to an extent. But even in her circumstance, same thing. She grew up on the border and was one of the few kids that didn't know how to speak Spanish in a culture where most everybody speaks Spanish on the border. That's just how it is. And she's like conversational now, but she's not completely fluent, And, it's all this push to try to conform, to try to not give them, the grand them, any excuse. And what I think is missing from that is they don't need an excuse. That's just gonna happen.
Yeah, that's fair.
Might as well learn the language. So like slowly but surely, like my Korean is that of like probably a 4-year-old, maybe worse. I have a really hard time conjugating for time, like future tense, past tense.
Yeah.
And I have a really hard time conjugating. Well, I've eventually learned how to conjugate for respect, which is an interesting part of Korean language, where you conjugate verbs based on how respectful you want to be.
Sure. There's like some of that in Spanish, but not nearly as much as I understand of Eastern languages.
Yeah.
Which is a small understanding.
Yeah, for instance, like the what I like to use as an example, and my web captioner is going to lose its ability to follow along here in a moment, is the phrase like, I go to school. 학교에 가요. Or 학교에 가. I was saying it to you. 학교에 가. 학교, school. 에, to. 가, go. Saying that to you, you're an individual that are younger than me. I would consider a friend. So we're talking in friendly terms, right? If I were to say it to my older brother, 학교에 가요. Okay? I put the yo at the end to indicate I am offering that person a bit of extra respect. If I say it to like my boss, 학교에 갔습니다, I am putting the extra level of respect on it. But here's the thing. If I say they go to school, 학교에 가. I go to school. 학교에 가. You go to school. 학교에 가. Like, I don't conjugate the verb based on who's the subject.
Interesting. Okay. So I was like listening to it, I'm like, I feel like you just said the same thing 3 times. Okay, you did. Good.
I did literally say the same thing 3 times. I conjugate the verb based on respect. I don't conjugate the verb based on the subject. I do conjugate the verb based on past, present, future tense. Language is fun.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been interesting. And to bring this slightly back to Dungeons and Dragons, and by back I mean on it for the first time, is I've had a lot of fun in my recent world actually utilizing language in a way that I'd never done before. And I think a lot of it came from this interaction that I had where I really did feel like an outsider because I did not share a language with people I needed or wanted to communicate with. And it's definitely something that in our day-to-day lives, I mean, I'm surrounded by English speakers. My friends are surrounded by English speakers. And for most of my time playing D&D, language was something we'd brush off because I don't know, we didn't see it as interesting, or it just wasn't a major part of what we wanted to play off of. I don't know the exact reason, but I am now seeing these opportunities that creating these language barriers and showing them get broken down as well can foster this character growth and a desire to be able to, speak other languages or whatever. And there's been, a lot of opportunities that I've now presented to my players because I've now been in that situation.
Yeah, it's pulling in your life experience into the game sometimes.
It's impossible not to do, even if it's
really
not on
is.
purpose.
It really is. It's funny because, like, I make a lot of hullabaloo because of my legal background. Obviously, it's part of my name.
Yeah.
But my educational background prior to going to law school is political science. I have a degree in political science. While I don't bring like trials into my D&D game, it's all about politics. It's all about political structures, the spreading of information amongst the society, and how you do that. All that sort of stuff. It's just fascinating to me. Like, where power comes from in the political sense.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that bothers me about how most people play D&D and what is realistic and unrealistic, aside from the fact that I'd say 4 times out of 5 when somebody says they do something because it's realistic or unrealistic, they're just trying to discriminate. And they're using realism as an excuse to do so. It's like when people are like, wow, your fantasy world is incredibly chauvinistic. Well, that's how it really was. You made up this world. There's no how it really was. Okay, you put that in there on purpose. Like,
sure.
Like,
yeah, I think anybody who really tries to stand on the legs of my fantasy game about throwing magic around and becoming a incredible sword fighter in the course of a couple of months tries to hide behind realism is missing the point of why we play in the first place.
Just like, and what's funny to me is like the comment is always like, I don't know how these snowflakes ever even played this game. It must be unbearable with all their safe spaces and whatnot. It's like, apparently I have to make sure that I'm using the absolutely correct polearm in your world, and I don't have the time to research that. This is a fantasy game. I want to shoot the fireball.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
And yeah, so like people talking about like the my dungeons are not accessible. Okay, I don't care. I'm never gonna be at your table. Clearly, like.
I don't think we vibe. I think it's been decided.
You and me, it's like you and me are never happening. I don't know.
Right. And to me, it's I think people, what they think they want is realism, but in all reality, I think all people want at all is consistency. And that's a very different argument. I mean, just like a totally different conversation, but I think the two get wrapped up when they shouldn't. Realism we've thrown out the window when we decided to sit in the basement, use rules from a book or from our heads if we made up these rules, and act out a fantasy scenario. We have already agreed when we sat down that realism is gone. We are not making the barbarian punch through a door when they are trying to get through a door. That's silly. That's not why we're here. But consistency, I think, is where it gets wrapped up, because they say, well, no, I mean, based on how I expect things to go, this is impossible. So I'm just going to shut it down entirely because I want verisimilitude. I want that realism. And it's a total joke to say that you can't get verisimilitude unless unless you're being ableist.
Which, like, it's one of those things where I don't know if I'm the right person to bring up this topic. And so I
Sure.
vacillated on whether or not
And we can segue at any time.
to bring this up. But, like, I wonder if anyone who talks about what disabled people can or cannot do have ever watched the Paralympic Games, which is happening right now. I say this because I have experience with it. I was a friend of mine from back in college was a Paralympian. She was a disabled archer, or competed in archery at the Paralympic Games in China. She got the bronze. One of the best archers in the world, period.
Right.
Regardless of category.
Right.
And by far better than me. And she brought in some of her friends and teammates. And I saw this guy in a wheelchair. And he had a zipper tab. You know, like you pull your jacket coat up or whatever.
Okay.
Attached to the bowstring. And I was like, hey, what's that for? I was like, that's how I pull a bow. It's like, that seems weird. What do you mean? I had never seen that before. And he gets it and he puts it in his teeth. And then he just draws the bow like that. I was like, how are your teeth not flying out? Because of my ignorance, I didn't recognize that your jaw strength and teeth can withstand an intense amount of weight.
Yeah.
And so he just bit down, lined up the shot, fired. With accuracy that I could never match.
Right.
Right now, the world record for the longest accurate archery shot is held by a disabled archer. Regardless of category.
Yeah.
Able, disabled, doesn't matter. He has no arms. So he sits, has a brace on his shoulder that connects to the string, and he does this to release it. And
I'm sorry.
hello. A little bit. Excuse me. So he has this thing, and it releases from here, and he pushes it out with his foot, and holds on to it between the big toe and rest of the foot, and just leans back and fires, and he can shoot at a further distance accurately, better than any archer on the planet, bar none.
That's incredible.
To which I'm like, you don't know, you person who is making this. Yeah, Mrs. Kimchi almost made a cameo. You person who is speaking about this sort of stuff. Oh, by the way, it's Sam. Full size Sam, not Pocket Sam.
I think I preferred Pocket Sam, actually. It's a joke, Sam. I like you normal size too. Or whatever size you are. I don't care.
All sizes.
All sizes.
Giant size Sam would be terrifying. It's the hero we need.
Moderating the world.
Moderating the world. But pocket size in real life, 5'4". Well, I mean,
it's all relative.
it's all relative. But these people on these forums who are commenting on what a person in a wheelchair, or a person who utilizes a wheelchair, or a person who would be considered disabled, what they can and cannot do, they have no idea. They have no frame of reference. I don't know if they've even met people like this. They have this idea in their mind of what a disabled person is or looks like or can do or cannot do, and all these sort of like examples in their brain, but they have no actual understanding. I've seen these athletes in person do things I can't do. And I'm just thinking to myself, I have no frame of, like, that provided me with a frame of reference of, 10 minutes before I had this discussion with this individual, I'm thinking to myself, how does he pull a bow? And then 10 minutes later, I'm looking at an individual who does it far better than I ever could.
Right. Far better than most of the world ever could.
And I was a practicing archer. I was a member of the team.
Mhm.
Okay. This is not like far better than I ever could. I'm a person walking down the street. I am a person who was going into archery practice daily. Okay. For hours. And they were just leaving me in the dust.
Right.
Their scores were made mine look infinitesimal,
Right.
And I was a really good shot. So, I mean, it's just the frame of reference isn't there. You have no idea.
Well, what's funny to me is it shouldn't be necessary for everybody to have those specific experiences to extrapolate that they just don't know everything, or they can't assume everything. It seems silly to me to. You started this off by saying that these people should see the Paralympics, and to me that's totally true. Yes, maybe that would help them, maybe not. Maybe they're just gonna close off to it and say that's an exception and move on because they want to remain ignorant. But to me, it's like that shouldn't even be necessary. You shouldn't have to, because it should be simple to accept as a human being. You don't know everything, and you can't account for every variable, and not everything is as it seems. I mean, that's just like should be a baseline.
And that doesn't even call into the fact that it's a fantasy game and none of that should matter anyway.
True.
Like, like let people play the game however they want to play the game, right? Like I'm just tackling, like, this is me trying to say, okay, let's take your prejudiced or bigoted ideas for granted. Let's just accept them, and now let's argue with you on your terms. So if it seems like I'm ignoring some of the obvious here, that's why. My mentality is like, okay, you're going to establish this as your baseline. I'm going to try to defeat your arguments where you are on your home turf.
Yeah, that's what makes you a good lawyer.
So
or maybe you're a bad lawyer. I don't know your record.
You
but
have no idea.
Yeah.
It's an illusion. Like, for all you all know, I'm a terrible attorney. I don't know. I think I'm good at my job.
I would say that would be probably like the biggest shock to me of all things. I mean, maybe even if you're like an average one, sure. Like I could, if somebody's like, yeah, he's pretty average, I'd be like, oh wow, I had no idea, but okay, I can believe that. But if it was like, no, he's terrible, that'd be kind of shocking.
But yeah, but I always try to meet people where they are, and sometimes I get a little criticism for that, because it's like, yeah, but that's not the point. Like, you're missing the obvious. And I was like, I'm sort of intentionally missing the obvious here. But because it's just gatekeeping, and it really shows, because that's the excuse. It's the DM's version of that's what my character would do, right?
Sure. That's what my world would do.
That's what my world would do.
Then don't make it.
So realism for you is everyone in, your elven kingdom speaks the exact same language, and all elves in this entire planet speak one language. But a wheelchair in a dungeon, that's the line. No, that to me tells me it's not about realism. It's just about bigotry. And it's just about what you are okay with being bigoted about. You can't say that when you're talking to somebody. I'm trying to change hearts and
No.
minds, but
No, you're totally right, and that's why I do appreciate your style of reasoning. Is you're not trying to appeal to the emotional aspects here. You're trying to just bring it into the factual, and as you said, you're arguing it starting at their baseline, like based on your understanding. Let me take down why you're wrong without trying to I guess, I don't know, assume basics.
yeah, because
Basics are gone.
A lot of debates, like my goalposts are here, your goalposts are here, right? What my first attempt is to do is to score in your goalpost. So I want to be sure that my acumen with rhetoric and debate is to a point where I can take you on your own field and show why you're just exposing your prejudice as opposed to being a bastion of realism. Eyebrow waggle.
My world's so realistic that every time you roll up a character, there's a 40% chance that you die at childbirth, because we're going for such realism. It's just like the Middle Ages.
I keep track of stools. Make sure that not only are you eating, but you're. This is getting ridiculous.
You know what? I gave you the benefit of the doubt. I thought you were talking about like wooden stools, and I was waiting for you to go on some tirade about like, oh, based on the amount of trees in the area, you really should only be able to have a certain amount of wooden stools. And realistically, these people would be sitting on the ground because there's not enough trees in this kingdom. But no, you meant bowel movements, and cheers to that.
Here's the problem. I try to be funny sometimes, and that's when I get myself into. I should stop trying to be funny.
Don't.
It's downhill. And with that, here we find ourselves at 2 hours. Flew by. I had a discussion with Jared before we started the stream. It was like, do you have a topic? Do you have something you want to talk about? And you said, I don't know. We talked for like 2 hours on the podcast and didn't really slow down. I figured we could figure something out on the fly.
Here we are
2 hours later. Hemorrhoid removal in the 1500s. Sam being Sam. Bring in the real talk.
How about I don't look that up ever, and some things I think it is good to remain ignorant on, and you can just assume. You can just assume and never go and never open that door.
Yeah, we're just gonna back off on that. That's a wonderful Sam giving us how we should close every stream. That should be my new sign off, by the way. It's just be like, and remember, if you're striving for realism in D&D, look up hemorrhoid removal from 15.
And think about all the time your characters spend on horses.
My next video is going to end like that. It's like, thanks for watching. I'm LegalKimchi. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to be notified when we have new videos. And if you have a spare moment, look up how hemorrhoids were removed in the 1500s. Just every video ends like that. Every single one.
Doesn't matter the original topic.
Doesn't matter what the topic
is.
It's a closer. Thanks for watching this video on the use of gunpowder in D&D games. Be sure to like us. Look up hemorrhoid removal in the 1500s. Oh my goodness. And with that, Jared, how do we find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at monsters_multi if you want to see some of the stuff I create that is, for the most part, less serious and less probably less thought-provoking from a overall intellectual standpoint. I'm just gonna like demean myself real quick because what else would we do? If you're looking for some entertaining content about 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons and you enjoy the game for its role-playing aspect as well as the mechanical aspects, and you're not afraid of shying away from that, then go ahead and check us out. As much as we love our mechanics, we also love how the mechanics facilitate good roleplay.
All right.
So check us out. If you like it, let us know. Or don't. That's okay. I had fun talking either way.
Exactly. And if you want to hear more of me, you can check out the podcast because I was on it like 3 months ago.
Yeah, the M&M chat. That's my my little side thing that I also love having and don't promote well enough because there's already so much to promote. Self-promotion's hard.
It is self-promo Saturday. That's the whole point.
Not for me, it's Sunday now, officially, so
Oof.
yeah. It's over. Not allowed to self-promote. Only on Saturdays.
Well, I can't defeat that logic. See, I've met you where you are, and you've won.
But what I am allowed to discuss is hemorrhoid removal in the 1500s.
Nope, we're not allowed to discuss that either. We're done with that topic. Anyway, but it's a fun. One last question before I sign up. How did you find me?
How did I find you originally? That's a very good question. I don't remember anymore. I want to say it was on Twitter because back in the day, I don't so much these days, but I would just go on the D&D hashtag and just strike up conversations with people. But maybe somebody I know retweeted you and you had a video and I was like, oh, this looks, I don't know, thought-provoking, and here we are.
Fair enough.
It's a good question. Now I'm like really curious because it was probably, and when did you start making stuff? You said almost a year now?
It's almost been a year now.
And it's been at least 6-7 months. So I don't know. I just gonna guess it was just on Twitter in some fashion. So Twitter did work out for you. There you go.
There we go.
And
Funneling you here.
Yeah, I'm a really big fan of finding people doing things that are actually worthwhile and I like, and trying to engage with it in whatever capacity possible, because I like when people engage with me as a small creator. And when I get that word out that, oh, hey, like I love what you're doing because of what you did, I'm doing X, Y, and Z, that's a great feeling. And I like to give people that as well.
I appreciate that.
Because of your video essays, I've thought a whole bunch about my games.
And that's the point.
Yeah.
To think about things complexly and to err on the side of kindness. All right, folks, we're going to let you go. Good night.
Good night, everyone.